Deep in the Brecon Beacons, a caver lies injured. His leg broken. His jaw shattered. Trapped nearly a kilometer underground. Over 250 rescuers mobilized, battling narrow passages, darkness, and exhaustion. A rescue that took 54 relentless hours. Welcome to the Real ResQ Podcast, part of Vertical Helicast family and in partnership with Vertical Magazine, keeping the global rotorcrafts community connected with real voices, real stories, and a real commitment to professional excellence. We're alongside the Hangar Z, the Helicopter Podcast, Valor Flight Crew, and Vertical MRO Podcast. Discover every show at verticalhelicast.com. A shout out to our sponsors to say thank you for supporting this podcast and this episode. Airbus, pioneering sustainable aerospace for a safe, united world. Check them out at airbus.com. Axness, their mission, wireless intercom. Check them out at axness.com. Onboard systems, hoist and winch. When lives are on the line, proven performance means everything. Learn more at hoist-winch.onboardsystems.com. And if you want to help us support this podcast even further, go to the realrescuestore.com and check out all the swag. All right, let's get into our next episode with a guy who has some unforgettable quirks. So his left foot is size 11, while his right foot is only size 9. Don't worry, he still gets around no problem. He's a very enthusiastic tuba player, and he has explored caves underground on 5 different continents. He is also a dedicated volunteer medical officer with the Derbyshire Cave Rescue Team, and they work all on donations. So if you are willing to donate to help this team out, go to derbyshirecro.org.uk, and it's just every dollar that goes into it helps this team to respond to the next emergency. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Dr. Brendan Sloan. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Real ResQ Podcast. I've got a guest today from the UK. It's a British cave rescue medical officer. His name, Mr. Brendan Sloan. What's up, Brendan?
Hey, nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Doctor,
how are you?
Doctor.
You don't need to be formal about it.
Okay. Man, I am wonderful. How are you?
Good. Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
Just fresh back from summer holidays, so we'll recharged and ready to go.
Oh, yeah? Where'd you go?
So down in South Wales, right on the far tip southwest. So it's the smallest city in the UK called St David's, which is pretty much a town that has a cathedral. And then just out a little beyond that, even managed to spend a night wild camping on a cave out on St David's Head. Just the sound of the sea.
What?
Beautiful.
That's the kind of vacation I'm talking about. Exactly what I want to do. That's fantastic. I actually took my wife out. We went rappelling off a waterfall once, and that was the last time she'll ever do that with me.
Oh,
I think it's the last time she's ever going to let me book a trip, too. But I like that. Yeah. So you're back. You're ready. You're feeling good.
Absolutely.
Good. Now, you would be the medical director. Are you on call while you're actually on vacation, or is this like how's that work?
So all of the cave rescue teams in the UK, it's all volunteers, and we're on duty, if you like, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if there's a call out, we'll get a call. If we're not free, if I'm in the middle of work and I can't go, then I can't go. But if I'm free, then I'll go. And that's true for all of my colleagues. Yeah. So whenever. So if I get a call out in the middle, I apologise, but hopefully unlikely.
Huh. I'm just going to listen in. Is that weird? All right. So while you're on vacation, did you get any calls? Like where your wife was like, really? We're on vacation.
Yeah, no, we did have one. Yeah. Our team had a call. So I couldn't make it because I was about 6 hours away from the from where it was. But yeah, we have a big open entrance shaft in the Peak District called Eldon Holt, about 60 metres straight down to the floor, and some people had gone down but were struggling to get back up again. So some of our team went out and hauled them back up again. So it's about 200 foot for the American market.
Thank you.
Daylight, but at night time. But it's one of the ones we train on regularly. It's quite a big area. It's quite an exposed thing. But yeah, they'd gone down to the bottom and were struggling to get back out again. So it was an evening trip out for some of my colleagues, all rescued safely.
God.
But yeah,
and you were part of the phone call chain.
Yeah,
I think your wife looked at you like, "Are you serious right now?"
Not again. So with the medical bit, there's times when I have to go and do things, and there's times when I can offer advice. So my reply on that normally is, "I can't come, but I can offer advice if you need," because we can use radios and stuff to communicate. And on this, they went down and they were fine, so they didn't need any medical things. It was a technical rescue, but yeah, always on duty.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, with you being the medical director, does that mean like you are the phone call? So I think of a medical director like as a paramedic, right? So if I need advice that's beyond my scope of practice and or outside our basic guidelines that we're supposed to follow, it's like hey, let's call med direction and make sure. Is that you?
Sort of. So all of the cave rescue teams and mountain rescue teams in the UK, they're all voluntary teams. So it's kind of different here to many other countries. I'm not totally down with how it works in the States, but I know speaking to some of my colleagues in the European teams, some of them are kind of more government-run, formal organisations. People are employed. So none of us are employed. We're all volunteers. So 16 teams across the UK and Ireland who cover cave rescues kind of services, and they all cover different areas. So each of the teams will have their own medical officer, and I've been the medical officer for my local team before, and they kind of sort out the local bits of some of the training and equipment, and not all of them are doctors. Some of them are. Some teams don't have any kind of doctors or paramedics, and it's someone who's an experienced first aider, but they don't have any formal medical training, if you like. So British Cave Rescue Council is the coordinating body for all of those. There's a bit about governance, there's a bit about representation, there's a bit about, we're tasked by the police, so there are various national bodies we speak into, along with Mountain Rescue England and Wales. So I think you've spoken to some people from some of the mountain rescue teams. So the teams do the rescue, but Mountain Rescue England and Wales do the oversight and the governance, and British Cave Rescue is the same. But because we have a relatively small pool, so we've probably got less than 10 cave rescue doctors in the UK, we do also have a way that if you need a doctor or a paramedic to come and do doctor things or give advice about that, then there's a way of calling us and we can potentially come or offer advice. And actually within the Peak District, which is where I am, we do that for all the Peak District mountain rescue and cave rescue teams as well. So there's a pool of medical people that if someone's badly hurt on a hill or underground, they can get a medical person rather than one of our first aid trained who is good, but there are limits obviously to what they can do.
Yeah, wow, that's cool, man. That is what a great asset to have, especially I look at a guy like me. I mean, like, so right now, I mean, I am a paramedic. I hold that card. I hold it proud. That was some. I just do. Okay. I mean, you holding the doctor card, you win. You got it. But I'm so pumped to be a medic, and but I am inactive right now. That all that means is that I'm not currently working as a paramedic, but I still hold the card. I just have to go in, get signed off. But having the medical director as an asset like that, like if I were to show up out there, or if I were to show up on something and I had as a volunteer to be like, "Hey doc, this is what we've got. Can I do this?" I think that's awesome. Yeah.
So we're very lucky in the UK with our for our kind of first response and search and rescue organisations. So we've got dispensation where people who are not medical professionals are able to give medication if they've been trained. So one of the things I do, so mountain rescue and cave rescue work fairly closely together, and there's a few teams which do both. So both do underground and surface. I'm a team that's purely underground, and we have surface teams who cover the surface bits, but some of the ones in Yorkshire do both. So, but we work very closely together. So I coordinate nationally we call it now the remote rural medical technician, previously the casualty care course. And that's kind of very advanced first aid, but it allows you to give medicines as well, because we train people how to do that. And that includes strong painkillers, things like morphine, because if you're stuck on the top of a mountain or underground and a doctor can't get to you, it is reasonable for someone to be able to give them proper pain relief and do things. So that's been something that's written into law. It's been going since the 1940s, 50s-ish, and kind of sort of informally you're not really allowed to do it, but it's not a problem, and it's now actually formalised in law. So when I go and speak to a load of the other cave rescue teams in Europe, they're very limited on who can do stuff if they're not a medical professional, and they're very envious of what we can do. We're in a very lucky position. So some of the some of the really important stuff I do is training people up for the casualty care course, because I can make it to some rescues. I can't make it to all of them, but if I can train people, there can always be someone who's trained who can get there. And actually having people who are trained and are available is probably the best thing I can do. Obviously, I like going on rescues. I like being able to help. But some of the very gratifying times is when I've not been able to make it and the casualties had really good care from people that I've trained and have done exactly what I knew they're capable of doing. And we're allowed to do it partly because of the structures we've set up, and I help coordinate. So that's quite nice.
I freaking love that. I actually think a lot about the patients. So, side note, right? I was hiking a mountain this past summer, and a lady had hurt her knee, and we had to help her off the mountain. And I say we, I was just kind of along for the ride. I was like the eighth wheel in the team, but I wasn't really part of the team. I just kind of got roped into it. It was awesome. Anyway, my first thought was that, man, I wish we could give her a little bit of painkillers, and they popped out like Motrin, like a ibuprofen. I was like, wow. You guys can do that. Like, yeah, we can totally give that. And that's to be able to do that. And I think about somebody like with a broken femur or any broken bone, they're in a lot of pain. And all of a sudden you got to move them. Oh my gosh, they're screaming. To be able to do something about that.
Well, it's a really big thing. So it was a GP called Wilson Hay, and he basically decided that it would probably be all right to let's train people up and let the teams give people morphine back. This is decades ago. And the kind of feeling was that probably is all right, because if no one else can get there, it's not really, if no one can get there, no one can get there. But if somebody can get there and they're trained, it seems appropriate for them to be able to do something to help the person. So, medication's part of it, splinting, or proper medical stuff, because we are the teams being called out to help people when they've properly hurt themselves. So the kind of put a plaster on it, wait for the ambulance to come doesn't really work if the ambulance can't get there. So it's a really good thing, and we're very lucky to have it. Comes with a lot of. It's not a small qualification to do. My wife is not medical, and she's done it, and it is a lot of it's a lot of learning and practice and things to know. And team members come from all walks of life. We've got people who are professionals. We've got people who are teachers, lawyers. We've also got people who are builders, mechanics. Don't really have lots of formal education things, but they do it because they want to. And actually, that's really, really valuable. It's one of the really nice things about the teams. It's people are interested rather than people with a particular background. The background is, in my case, they like caving and they want to help people.
That is so cool, man. I love the fact that you volunteer not only for the team and help out, but you're also volunteering to help get the education out there to get these guys and girls up to another level. Yeah. That's phenomenal.
That's the most important bit, to be honest, because that's the way you leave. You help more people that way rather than being the person who does it all. But then if I'm not free or I hurt myself, I'd quite like it. There's a selfish element. If I hurt myself, I'd like people to come and treat me well. And I don't really want to be teaching them at that point. It's a bit late then.
Here, insert this here. Hold this knife here. Yeah. Ah!
Not like that.
Yeah. Don't cut that one. Oh, that's funny. Are you currently, where are you currently practicing your, I'm going to call it your doctor skills? Are you in an ER?
So I work predominantly in Wakefield. So I live in Sheffield, which is kind of middle of the UK, next to the Peak District. Big steel city, and then Wakefield is kind of halfway between that and Leeds, so northish of England. Lots of old kind of coal mines and heavy industry, which is less active than it was. So my day job is I'm a consultant in anaesthetics and intensive care. I work in the regional burns centre, so we get people with burns from all across of Yorkshire. That's I do quite a lot of that. So kind of acute injured, ill people, but often very different to what we see underground. And also what I'm doing is like the absolute opposite end. So intensive care, you've got all the equipment, all the people, all the stuff, all the tests, all immediately. And cave rescue, it's you and your bag in the dark, in the wet, underground, with no way of getting anyone else there. So it's kind of polar opposites. But yeah, it's interesting, but things like giving people pain relief and trying to work out what's wrong with people is a fairly big part of both of them. So it does kind of complement itself.
I love it. Yeah, that's great. So what brought you into being a doctor? Actually, let me back up even further. Where are you from? Like, let
originally,
background about you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm from much further south. So I'm from Salisbury, which has got a big cathedral. It's the big cathedral where some ex-Russian spies got poisoned a few years ago and made quite a lot of the news. All
right.
But the cathedral is kind of like from the 1400s. It is, in my unbiased opinion, the finest cathedral in the UK. And I grew up there. But Salisbury is known for many things, but not for its caves or for its mountains. So it's all kind of chalk downland, all very nice, all relatively kind of flat rolling hills, that kind of thing. And then I went to university in Sheffield, which is right by the Peak District. So from the centre of Sheffield, you can be out into kind of certainly hills, if not proper mountains, within about 30 minutes. I can be underground from where I live in about 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And yeah, so the only experience of caving I'd done before I went to university is our school had a outward bounds trip when I was about 15, 16 to South Wales.
Yeah.
We did like a day of caving, a day of climbing, a day of walking, a day of kayaking, and the last day you could do one of the things again. And I was one of like the 5 people who went and did caving again. It's like, this is really awesome, but there isn't anything down where I live. And I got a place at Sheffield University, and you get the kind of thing coming through saying all the societies that are there. As a caving society, right, well, I'll definitely be joining that. So first week joined up, second week did my first trip. 3 months later was the chairman of the caving club because the people who were in the final year were all leaving and they needed someone to do it, and then never really looked back. So caving
That's awesome.
Very quickly after I started uni, and then Cave Rescue came fairly soon after that, to be honest, because I worked out that caving was not going to be something I was going to drop very quickly. And it is, when you do something and you realise, no, this is very much my kind of thing. I like this. I find it interesting. Went off to Spain to do some exploration stuff on the summer of my first end of summer of my first year. And so at the beginning of my second year, one of my mates who I've done a lot of caving with suggested I came along to a cave rescue team meeting. It's like, well, I'm going to carry on doing this and I'm going to be a doctor in about 4 years' time. So it makes sense. So I've been a full member of the team since 2002. So I started uni in 2000, and then I graduated as a doc in 2005 and became one of the team doctors. And then when I finished all my training, I became the medical officer of British Cave Rescue in about 2016, 2017. The problem during training is because you're working nights, you're working days, you're rotating all over the place. It's hard to be reliably contactable. So while I wouldn't mind have done it, it's just very difficult if your shifts keep on changing.
Trying to get a doctor certification.
Yeah, so once I finished and I was doing regular, I knew which days I was working and I could have a bit more regularity to it. I took on that role. So I've done that since about the Cave Rescue, medical officer of British Cave Rescue, since I think 2017. I thought it was going to be relatively easy and straightforward, and then the next year was the Thailand Cave Rescue, and suddenly British Cave Rescue was all over all the international papers. Like, what on earth have I signed myself up for? I wasn't particularly involved in that, but you kind of think it's fine, no one's ever going to know what we do, and then suddenly everyone
balls up. Yeah.
Where the hell has this come from? So yeah,
you wanting to be a doctor, what brought you to wanting to be a doctor?
So doctoring. So I mean, I always tell people it's, when you're a kid and you kind of think you want to be a pilot or an astronaut or a builder or a doctor, and then you come up with a sensible idea like being an accountant or a surveyor or, working as a middle manager in an office. I never really came up with a better idea. I had a club foot when I was a kid, so I had that operated on when I was about 3 months old. So I've got a slightly little foot and a slightly short leg. Not that people really notice now. I limp a little bit when I walk fast, but it's not really stopped me from doing that much. But I had an operation when I was little. I was in hospital a little bit when I was little, so I kind of had a bit of exposure to it. But genuinely, I can't really remember not wanting to be a doctor. And my family are not, I had a granddad who was a dentist who died when I was about 1 year old. So I can't really say that was a big influence, and no one else in the rest of the family is medical. So it struck me as something I thought I'd probably want to do. And fortunately, 30 odd years later from when I first thought about, or 40 years and later, I've not decided I don't want to do it, and I seem to be all right at it, which is quite lucky, because if I hadn't liked it, I'm not quite sure what I would have done instead.
Caving.
Well, yeah,
cave.
it's hard to get paid to do that. I keep on hoping someone will pay me to do it, but it doesn't pay the bills, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. I get it. I get it when it's volunteer. Man, that's cool. Right on. So just your own motivation drive to be a doctor and go and made it happen.
Yeah, and then anesthetics and intensive care was just something I did when I was doing part of my training. It was like, actually, I really like this. I there's some thinking, there's some technical skills. You get to do quite a lot of interesting things, and there's quite a bit of variety in it as well. Because while I'm mostly putting people to sleep for anesthetics, it's different operations as opposed to doing the same operation time after time after time, or seeing the same condition time after time after time. So I find it works for me. I kind of knew medicine. I wasn't quite sure beyond that. I thought probably surgery, and then once I started doing anesthetics, I thought, actually, no, I really like doing this. And again, fortunately, that has worked out.
That's fantastic. I always enjoy the medicine side of our job. And I think I like it because there's a bit of complexity to it where sometimes you just got to figure stuff out. And don't get me wrong, like there are some of the easy ones, like, oh, they're not breathing. Well, you have to breathe for them, or their heart's not pumping, pump on the chest. Like those are like let's just mechanic stuff. It's man, I've got a pain here, but they're doing this over here, and you're like, oh, interesting. Oh, or this is happening and this is happening. You're like, oh, we got to figure this out. Let's have some fun. And
it's a bit like detective work, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And for the most part, when you start ruling things out, and the longer you're in it, the more you see like, oh yeah, this is probably this because I've seen this before, like similar. But then you have the oddball things. You're like, dude, I don't know. We got to dig.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I mean, I remember we had a rescue not that long ago, a couple of years ago. And so we have a few show caves near us, which are ones where most of the ones near us are old mines. So in the Peak District, there's lots of old lead mining. So there's lead mines going back to like Roman times. But some of the bigger ones, they're pretty-ish at the end because they've got into some natural ore cavities and there's big crystals and they're quite nice. So members of the public can pay to go down them. And we get, there's a few of these around the country, and there's a kind of a slow, steady stream of that because some of the people who go down are not the fittest, not the wellest. I mean, if you're going caving, you've generally got some level of physical fitness. So the surface guys, the mountain rescue guys, that's not necessarily true. There's quite a lot of people with quite significant health problems doing a bit, not getting far off the road, but far enough that an ambulance can't get them and they get calls. But for us, generally, if you're caving properly, you're fairly well. Like the show caves, people go to with their grandparents who are in their 80s and have got some heart conditions, and when they start walking up the steps, they get some chest pain, and that's not something we tend to see. But we had a chap who started feeling unwell, but also had quite significant dementia. So trying to work out what was going on with him, because he got a load of existing health problems, was quite vague as to what was going on. And that's one where I was able to make it. But it took about an hour to get there, and the other guys had arrived before, and they're like, we have literally no idea what is going on with him because we just can't make it make sense. And to be honest, I spent quite a long time. It's like, I don't really know what's going on either, to be honest. I'm not sure. But I think we probably need to not be in here, and what we'll do is get him out and get him in an ambulance and get him to hospital, which we ended up doing. And we followed up on them, and he'd been in hospital for a couple of days, and they didn't really know what was wrong with him either, but it all kind of got better, and he went home. So he'd had some pain, but he wasn't quite sure, and he couldn't describe where it was, and it wasn't there, but it was there. It was very difficult.
Wild.
So, it's reassuring that no one else knew what was going on either. But that's kind of thing is where definitely having a medical person helps, because the guys we'd trained is like, I've not trained them to deal with that, but then if I'm stumped by it, it's a bit much to expect anyone else to be doing it. A lot of the more regular things is fairly straightforward. But yeah,
Doc doesn't know. I'm good.
Yeah, I just don't know.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing what we see and what we get, and you never know. That's why I love this job. We're gonna divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
All right, so I want to get into your very first cave rescue. Now, I actually got to emphasize this for a minute, is that you are officially my first cave rescue person on this podcast.
I am.
We've had
honored.
helicopter, boats, hikers, rappellers, mountain rescue. I've never had anybody that's done cave rescue, like legit cave rescue. You are the first. This is amazing.
It's a badge. It's a badge of honor. It's a badge of honor.
You get a T-shirt. That's all there is to that. Okay. But what was your very first cave rescue that you remember?
So my first one, I think it's 2004. So it was before I was a doctor, so still a medical student. So we've got this series of caves in the Peak District where there is a combination of old mines, so lead mines, and then natural cave which intersects at the bottom. So it's a block of limestone which is about 160, 170 meters thick, and at the bottom there's this big cave called Peak Cavern, which is a natural cave, and the water comes pouring out in the middle of the village. And then at the back of that there's an old lead mine called Speedwell Mine, which it's a very impressive. So it was dug in the 1700s, and it's basically a straight tunnel into the hillside for about half a mile, which has got water in it. It's a canal, and the miners used to use that to use boats to both get in and then float the lead ore out, because they'd only get paid for lead ore. They wouldn't get paid for any limestone waste. So you want to kind of minimize the amount of waste you bring out because you don't get paid for that. And now you can go in on a boat and you can get to a big cavern at the end, and there's a connection through. And then a few years ago, they found some surface things. You can go into it via a series of about 150 meters worth of shafts that you can drop down, which drops into the back end of that. So, and that's called JH, so James Hall over Engine Mine. All these shafts are named about the owners or whatever. So that's the shaft series. And so there was a couple of people going down. So you go down a 55-meter entrance shaft along quite an awkward cart gate level, which is a kind of a horizontal level. And when they were mining it out, the lead would generally form in vertical veins. So you would dig the lead out, and then any spare rock that wasn't lead ore you would stack, and so you'd have these false floors that you'd walk over, and then you'd mine underneath that, and you'd have a ceiling. So you're walking on a floor, but you may well be anywhere up a kind of 30-40 meter rift with various floors stacked along it. And this was all kind of done 200-300 years ago, so some of them collapse and some of them don't. So you go along this kind of up and down where bits of the floor have dropped out, and some of it's been stabilized by the people exploring. Then you drop down another 40-meter shaft, and then you get to a thing called Leviathan, which is an 80-meter shaft, which is pretty impressive, with a kind of thing called the workshop and the tea rooms partway down, where there's various miners' artifacts where they used to kind of crush some of the ore.
Tea room.
Yeah, well, you used to drink tea there. Yeah. It's very British.
Way down underground. This is great.
So I think they found some remnants of
tea time.
Yeah, well, they found some remnants, I think, of like pipes and pottery and stuff. So it's clearly where the miners used to sit and rest when they were working. And there's kind of some old wooden carts and stuff down there as well. So the team have been exploring. They've gone down this entrance along the cart gate level and then down this 40-meter pitch, but the rope that they'd put wasn't quite long enough, and they'd not tied a knot in the bottom of the rope, which is something that we'd always try and do so you don't come off. So the person at the bottom had basically come off the bottom of the rope and fallen about 2.5 meters onto his feet and was complaining of back pain and leg pain. And obviously the worry is that he's done something to his spine and that will be bad. And the choice at that point, so normally with caves, the choice is you go back out the way you came in, which for that would be quite an awkward 40-meter hall along some quite awkward passage, which is a bit unstable, and up the entrance. But because this one connects through, what we did is we dropped him down the 80-meter shaft and then through some boulders and then took him into the back of Speedwell and floated him out on the boat. So I arrived...
Float him out on a boat.
Yeah.
Inside a cave.
So it's the boat that the tourists use. It's kind of a wooden boat with some benches, and you sit on it and you stoop over because the roof's only about 3-4 foot above the level of the benches, and then you get to these bigger areas. But it's worked perfectly well for putting a stretcher on and floating him out that way is quite stable. But getting him down to that point was a bit more awkward. So I turned up, helped carry some equipment in along the bits, and then help rig it. And then whenever we're doing anything with a casualty being raised or lowered on ropes, we'd always have a jockey or a barrow boy, as we call them, so somebody with them to make sure that they're okay, to stop them being pulled into the rocks, to try and if anything's, if there's water coming down, trying to keep them diverted away from the water, any of these kind of things. And so I ended up doing that, so being lowered down kind of 80 meters, attached to this guy, chatting away with him, not really able to do anything particularly medically. And actually, to be fair, apart from having back pain, I think some shoulder pain as well, he was okay, but it's quite intimidating being locked in this. And not all of the shafts in the mines are big enough that you can do that. This Leviathan is a big open shaft, so you're talking about something which is probably 20, 30 foot across. So it's quite an impressive and intimidating bit. So lowered him down and then helped carry him out. So I remember all of that, and I don't know. So he went out on the first boat, and then we must have had about 40 people underground for the rescue. So the boats then came back and other people went out on it. And I remember I was being very good and I waited for the last boat. And I think it must have been like November or something like that. So I caught the last boat out with like 3 of my other mates, and we were really cold. And then you get to the end and you walk up some stairs to get out to the entrance, and he was in an ambulance by that point. It went off, and I don't think he'd done anything particularly serious. He's certainly not broken anything major. But he, you only know that when you get to hospital and you do the scans.
Right.
I just remember my hands being so cold trying to get changed and undo anything. I couldn't do that. And we have some support people who come out and kind of make hot tea and coffee and stuff when you come out, and being given a cup of tea and proceeding to throw it all over myself because I was shaking that hard because I was shivering, and then having to have like 4 half cups of tea, because with a half cup of tea, it would still stay within the mug when I was shaking backwards and forwards. That was I think it was about 2:00 in the morning when we got out, because a lot of these things, people go caving during the day, so the rescues tend to come later in the day, and so quite often run overnight. And, it's dark anyway, so it doesn't make that much difference. But you come out in the middle of the night and it's cold, and all you want's a cup of tea, and you're just unable to make it go into your mouth, and it's just going all over you.
Shaking as you're trying to drink, you're like, it's going all over me.
So yeah, that was quite that was a fairly big rescue. But you're certainly that's kind of the first one I properly remember being involved in.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome! My God, I can't believe you're like floating him out on a boat too. That's wild to me. What a great idea! Like, you're gonna go down lower to get into a river and then float him out.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
There's not many places in the UK where you can do that, because a lot of the natural cave rivers tend to be, there's descent on them, so it'd be more like going down rapids. And also quite often with natural things, at some point the water entirely fills the tunnel, and so you end up with flooded passage, so you have to go out the other way. So this is one of the few where you can float them out at the bottom. There are a couple of other places where we can use floating bits, but yeah, it for him it would have been much easier taking him out that way than it was taking him out the top entrance. That would have been a lot harder and probably a lot more unpleasant for him.
Oh, that's great. That is great. Random question with this one is, I'm going to move on out of that story a little bit, but with the cave like that, where you can have like you can float somebody out on a boat, or you have a way to get in. Do you have animals that get stuck, like that just wander on in? And
yeah,
do you really?
So that one it would be less likely for animals, because the Speedwell and Peak Cavern, the 2 bottom entrances, are show caves, so they're people own the access to it, so they're kind of gated to stop people going in without paying, if you like. Although they're pretty good about allowing cavers to go in there. But no, we do have a fair number of animal rescues. About we don't have a massive number of rescues in the UK underground each year. I mean, we get probably maybe 50 call outs a year across the entire of the UK.
So looking like a handful. That's
I mean, so the mountain rescue guys, I think they had something like 3,000 call outs across England and Wales last year. But
I remember Harry saying there was
and that's not including Scotland. And so for 50 years, England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and the Republic of Ireland. But then,
all right, say that one more time. Hold on. Cave rescue is what?
So England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and the Republic of Ireland is all covered by British Cave Rescue.
Oh my God!
All different teams, but so different.
Wow.
There is a team which covers Scotland, but then in Scotland, most of the caves are located in one particular area. The Peak District we cover quite a big area, but most of our activity is in where our base is, because that's where the majority of the caves are. But I think there's something like every county in the UK has had a cave rescue incident at some point, but in some of the areas where there aren't natural caves, it might be culverts or chalk mines or something like that, and they've asked people to search it previously. And that's normally a missing person search, and they're wanting people to search some underground bits with equipment. But most of our activity is in the areas where there are caves. But so there are areas where the majority of the caves are all natural. So up in the Yorkshire Dales, most of them are natural caves, and so it's quite easy for sheep or lambs or occasionally other animals to fall down them. In South Wales, they have quite a lot of old coal mines, and so one of the ones they get involved in is where all the mining waste is piled up and it then starts to slip. You end up with these big cracks in them, and people walk their dogs around there, and quite often dogs fall down them. And getting down into those can be really unpleasant because it's really very unstable, and there's a couple of very thin members who kind of get lowered down on a rope to try and fish dogs out, which is normally successful, but occasionally they slip down into something which is so small you just can't get in. And the problem is you're digging through loose spoil, which is slightly mobile, so you need at some point to make a decision as to whether you can actually do it or not. We've got most of the teams have got a dog, like there are catcher things that the vets will use with a noose or a long stick to try and get to them. But even with those, sometimes you can't get close enough just because these things can be quite deep. So our one normally is sheep, and we've had a few cows where they've been fallen down things. I mean, I've abseiled off the backhoe of a tractor before to go down and find a sheep which has found kind of often for us, little old mine shaft, which the farmers have kind of filled the top in, and then at some point it's rained or whatever, and the top has collapsed, and so you ended up with a hole that the farmer didn't know was there, and then there's a sheep down the hole. But with some of those, because the top's really unstable, we've ended up so abseiling off the back of a tractor to go down and fish a lamb out of a hole, while trying not to touch any of the walls because the walls are all really unstable. I mean, sheep at least are quite light. Lambs are light. Sheep are bigger, but you can kind of manage them. We've had a few where cows have gone down things, or there's like a horse has managed to walk its way into a mine at it. We had a calf which made its way into a culvert underneath a car park a couple of years ago, and some of my colleagues had to go and try and persuade it to walk backwards, and then they ended up digging a hole. They got like the water company or something in to dig a hole in the top with an excavator, and end up getting the cow backed back and then lifted it out on a harness, because this cow had kind of walked 150 meters up a culvert and then it couldn't turn around, and apparently cows find it really hard to walk backwards. So let's try and work out where it was. So we get some of those entertaining ones. We had an entire well down a hole at some point when there'd like nine foxhounds ended up down a hole. So the ironic thing is we get far more because we're all voluntary and we'll get donations. If you rescue a dog, you get loads of donations. If you rescue a person, no one cares.
They
you get donations from the family, but the members of the public always chip in. If you put a dog rescue on, it's a much better way of getting funds in.
Oh my gosh! All right, the next dog rescue, just send me a picture. I'll promote that with you. That'll be amazing. My wife will be so happy. Oh, they saved the dog. What the heck? I didn't even think of any of that. Wow. The fact that you guys go in and get the animals out. How do you, I guess the farmer would know. He's taking a head count of all the sheep. We have a missing sheep.
Most of our ones are the farmers. I mean, the sheep, I think there's probably quite a lot of sheep rescued by cavers, certainly out in the Yorkshire Dales, because a lot of the caves are on open access land, and the sheep are, during the summer, free to just kind of roam and eat. And it's not uncommon. You'll come to an entrance, look down, and there'll be a sheep at the bottom. It's like, fine, we'll fish the sheep out. But if we get called by the farmer, and some of them are further down or more stranded. So the sheep and cows, it tends to be the farmer is, I'm missing a cow, or there's a sheep down a hole and I can't get it. The dogs tend to be the people who are walking them, and a dog's pelted it off down a hole, which some of the smaller caves are, foxes live in them or badgers around them, and the dog smells it and goes in and then gets itself stuck. Okay. That can take a while.
Wild. Absolutely wild. With all the rescues that you've done that we're talking about, you've actually been able to use your own medical skills to like, and I know we talked about medications, but you've actually had to put like bones back into place.
Well, yeah. So we had one where somebody managed to dislocate their kneecap down one of the caves. So this is when I was still fairly junior. So I think it's maybe a year and a half out of medical school, and I was actually in between night shifts. So we got a call out for someone who was down a cave. So it's a cave called P8, and there's a stream running into it, and you go down some really nice stream passage, but it's kind of a bit narrow and a bit awkward. You're certainly carrying a stretcher out there would be hard. And then you drop down a couple of pitches and you get into this lower streamway, and there's some deep water, so you normally kind of traverse over. It's kind of bridge with your feet on one side and your hands on the other. And there was a group down there, and one of the people I think had slipped awkwardly while doing that and basically dislocated his kneecap. So he kind of sat there with his leg bent and his kneecap off to one side, and it was clearly very painful because his kneecap wasn't where it was meant to be. So we got this call out. So it's like, well, I can go. It was the afternoon, so about 2:00 or something, and my shift started at 8 in the evening. Okay, I can go. So we went out. It's like, right, what's happened? Guys, he's got a dislocated kneecap. We're fairly sure it's a dislocated kneecap from what he said. It's like, okay, right, I'll go down and see what I can do. So I went underground, and then we had a paramedic at the time who did some caving, was a paramedic locally, and so he was there as well. So we got down to this guy, looked at his leg, very clearly dislocated kneecap. Like, if you've ever seen them, it's really obvious because their knee's bent and the kneecap isn't where it's meant to be. It's
like literally really off clear. To one side.
Yeah. Like,
and you're like, that's not supposed to be there.
Doubt that's what it was. So I look at Tom, the paramedic, and Tom looks at me and it's like, it's dislocated kneecap. And he's like, yes. And then we moved around the corner. It's like, I've not put one of those back before. And Tom's like, no, I haven't either. Okay. But we know the principle. You straighten the leg and then it should come back into place. So it's like, we gave it a right. So we're going to need to put your kneecap back in. So we gave him some Entonox to breathe, so gas and air, so it numbs it a bit. And then straightened his leg out, and I flicked his kneecap and it went back into place. And he felt a lot better. And it's like, so anyway, it's 6:30 and I need to be on the surface in half an hour because I need to drive to work to do my night shift. So we'll just put you in a straight leg brace and the team will get you out. And then I absolutely hammered it out of there. I think it's the fastest exit I've ever done from it because I needed to be for my night shift. I think my wife was one of the rescue members as well. And she was still a member of the team. And it took them about 7 hours to get him out from there because he did make it out under his own steam. He was helped on the hauling bits, but with a long leg brace. But if your leg's not able to bend, it makes it a lot harder to go round.
Yeah.
But it would have been a lot slower in a stretcher because it's so narrow. So I had a very pleasant night shift, and then got a message from her while I was kind of resting in the doctor's mess to say, we've just got out. It's like, I think I probably got the better end of the deal there. But yeah, that was one where it was definitely it's definitely one that was helpful that I was actually there.
That's cool.
So I still remember that one.
Yeah, heck yeah, I can imagine. So like all of a sudden, and those are the ones where you've seen it in training or you've learned about it, and you're like, yes. I'm going to put this into practice right now. I'm kind of excited.
Sure, it'll be fine.
Yeah. They say the book says it's going to do
this.
The
book says it will be very easy.
Yeah.
So I have tried to do a shoulder relocation underground before. One of my colleagues has relocated one, but on that one we couldn't get the person relaxed enough, so we ended up splinting it and pulling it out and taking him out, and he got relocated because I think it had been out for a while and it had all spasmed up, and despite all this difference, we couldn't get him to release it because that would have been a nice one as well. Although again, you're still not going to use that arm on the way out. It's just no. And that was one that was mostly walking. There wasn't a lot of vertical. If it had been more vertical and he'd have been hauled around, I'd have been probably had another go a bit later. But yeah.
We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Whether your mission is saving lives or servicing high-value assets, Onboard Systems Hoist stays ready to assist. Features such as single point payout reduce the potential for hoist-induced load swings, enhancing overall safety. For more information, go to hoist-winch.onboardsystems.com.
So
I like this. I like having a doctor part of the team. This is pretty cool. This is good stuff.
Everyone else seems to do it as well. It's just me that doesn't always feel the. Everyone looks at you and it's like, oh, I guess it's on me then. I mean, the really useful thing we had one not that long, same cave actually, similar area, and a guy had slipped and hurt his back, and he was there with one other person. He was the one who knew the cave. He had hurt his back. He was really sore. He couldn't make his way out. And the person he was with didn't know the way out because they were the person on the first trip down there. So we got called out because they hadn't come out. And I arrived so there's another doctor on the team as well, who we arrived about the same time. And some people had gone underground, made contact, because we don't know, he's not come out. So it could be anything. They could be lost, they could be stuck, they could be badly injured, their rope could have snapped or whatever. And we had some people come in, it's like, we found him, he's hurt his back and he can't move his arms. It's like, this sounds really bad. This is not a good place to have this happen. This is not a good thing. This is not a good place to have it. So we went down with Kat, the other doctor. We got down to him. There's this guy standing up. And the other person with him was fine. She was just a bit cold, but so she was uninjured. So what happened? I fell and I bumped myself and my back hurts. And then we sat, we walked around for a bit and then we sat down. And then after about an hour, my hands got really tingly and numb and I couldn't move. It's like, so I think you're probably just cold. So he could move his arms absolutely fine. And the back that was hurting was right at the bottom of his back. It's like, well, so you've not broken your back. And while it may well be very sore, examine the rest of him. His ribs are a little bit tender, nothing else. It's like, so we could put you in a stretcher and that's going to take us about 20 hours to get you out. Or we could give you some pain relief and you can walk out. And if there's a problem, we'll stop. And he said, I think I prefer that option. And we walked him out, we hauled him a bit. And I think it took us about 3 hours to get him out. And I think he'd cracked the end off one of his, one of the processes of one of his vertebrae and broken one of his ribs. But we got him checked out by an ambulance on the surface.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to go to hospital. I think you can probably go home. And if there's a problem, come back and see someone because there's nothing, everything else is all right. And that's one where I think having the doctors there saying, it's okay, he can walk, we're happy with that, but we'll stick with him. I can't imagine any of the people I've trained with, my back hurts and I can't move my arms. That would have been anything other than a stretcher carry, and that would have been massive
20
task.
hours. Yeah. And then a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, and that's one of the kind of things where having doctors is definitely useful, more for the decision making rather than the decision's fine, but it's being happy to make that and also having a bit of backup to be able to make it rather than worrying about it.
Oh man, Brendan, this is awesome. Yeah, I like having you on my team. I'm calling you too. I'm not calling you from here. I don't, wherever I am in the world. Hey, Brendan,
I can offer advice. Yeah, be the standard response. I can't make it, but I can offer advice.
Yeah. I like this. Oh, it's great. I want to divert into another rescue that you had, which actually made a little bit of news, and it was kind of interesting. This story that we're about to get into actually made a little bit of news, and it starts with the Derbyshire Cave Rescue Organization. It's online. Cool little picture. Here's the headline. Call out 411. Titan, Castleton. Companions of two cavers on a down and up Titan trip became concerned when they didn't meet their agreed call-out time. Team members were called out at 19:55. That is 7:55, almost 8 o'clock at night for anybody that's not military. Saturday, 14th of December. The first member underground found two cavers sheltered at the foot of the Titan shaft, where one caver suffered from cold, tiredness, and feeling ill, could not negotiate the large pitch due to the excessive water. His companion chose to wait with him, and once DCRO members arrived, he was able to Persic out under his own steam, accompanied by a team member. The casualty was placed on a portable shelter and treated by our team doctor, whilst simultaneously a haul-out team had been set up to transfer the stranded caver to the surface, consisting of a UK record-breaking single haul of the full height of the Titan shaft to the breakthrough window. 128 meters, followed by the 46-meter entrance shaft. Oh my gosh. This is crazy. And as a matter of fact, they've got a picture here, which I'll have up online, but it's literally sitting next to the Blackpool Tower, which measures up to 158 meters. And this cave, they were down 174 meters to the bottom, right?
Yeah. That's the one.
Oh my gosh!
So that's happened? In the back of, so that's in the back of Peak Cavern and Speedwell and JH as well. So, so that was explored. Impressive. That was found from the bottom. So I know people who explored it. It's found in 1999, something like that, and they found the far end of Peak Cavern, a boulder choke, so a pile of boulders with what sounded like cavity above it. So they kind of dug their way up into this thing, and got to the bottom of it, and then it was climbed from the bottom. One of these things where you look at and you're like, surely it's got to be on the how is there still cave? Surely you must actually be on the surface by now because it is so big. So it's kind of split into two halves, a kind of 60-meter bit and an 80-meter bit. And I think the picture shows there's kind of a lip part way through. And then they explored up all of that, and then they dug down from the surface. So when they were doing some stuff right up at the top, they moved some boulders, and then on the surface some land slumped above it. So it's like, well, that seems like an obvious place. So they ended up digging from the surface. That 46-meter shaft from the top was dug from the surface to connect into it to try and explore the area, but it gives an amazing trip through. So it's a spectacular place, but there's a stream comes in halfway down on that lip, and then the bottom half of the shaft is in wet weather is absolutely covered in spray, and it's really loud as well. And then you drop down through some boulders on the bottom and you make your way on into the cave. And these guys had I think they were only ever planning on going down and coming back up the same way. So you can go down and go through, but if it's very wet, then the passage at the bottom can get too flooded, and you know, that there's an excellent trip to do, but it is a big trip. But going back up that again is quite an effort. And as I recall, the person who was kind of tired and exhausted, I think had started trying to do it, which is like, I'm not going to be able to do this. And the problem is, once you're on the rope by yourself, there's not really any way of someone helping you.
Yeah.
It's very windy, it's very wet, you can't see anyone. And there's also the way that it's rigged, there's a fairly committing free hang at the top of that pitch where you're hanging on the rope, transferring to another rope while hanging about 80 meters off the floor with water smashing over your head. So a good decision to not do it if you realize you're not going to be able to do it. So we had the choice of rigging it in two bits, one from that window where it was going to be hanging over an edge and very wet, or trying to haul it all from the breakthrough windows where when they dug down they kind of cave into the side of the cave. So that's a fairly dry place, and there's some pretty serious anchors up there. So we did it as about 130-ish meter haul. So I was down at the bottom checking this, and he was fine, just cold and tired, and I think relatively new to caving and just generally not having the best day of his life. And it was really cold. I remember there was snow on the ground, so the water coming down was cold.
It's going to be freezing.
I just remember they kept on rigging it, and you're trying to hang so it doesn't hang in the water too much. So, you know, if you think about climbing, you'll look at a climbing edge, you'll look at a crack or a root or a peak and be like, I want to get to there. And it's about following the route and following a line and having a very technical way of doing it. Whereas caving is about getting to the bottom or the top, depending which way you're going, and being alive. So it's not about being elegant, it's not about trying to do the hardest way, it's about trying to do it the safest way. So a lot of the time with water, it's about trying to be out of the water, because otherwise it's pretty horrendous. So they kept on radioing down. It's like, can you just hang on the rope and see how it hangs? Like, I'm hanging right in the water. Okay. And then it'd be like 10 minutes. Like, can you try again? Yeah. I'm still hanging right in the water. And after a few of these things, it's like, there isn't anywhere that it's going to hang where it isn't in the water, so we'll just do it. So they hauled it out. So I got, I climbed the rope under my own steam, and they hauled the other guy up as well, because actually when you're hauling that far we normally use a kind of a 3-to-1 advantage. So
nice,
because you're hauling with a 3-to-1, each haul actually doesn't move you that far, and there's quite a lot of stretch in that amount of rope as well. So to start with, it starts, you know, taking quite a while, and I'm there hanging, trying to keep him mostly out of the water. He's wearing a shelter tent over him, like a big kind of almost like a parachute. The water's running off. I'm absolutely soaked with water running straight into the top of my suit and straight out the bottom of my suit. And that's another one where I got to the surface like, I'm going to have to go and get changed now, or I might just turn into an icicle. But yeah, it's the biggest. I think it's the biggest single shaft in the UK. I mean, there are bigger single drops elsewhere in the world, but in the UK, that's the biggest single drop. So it was, it got some interest, and again within the cave rescue world, the technical bits of rigging something that big is you know, it was good fun. It was good fun,
that
although I would rather have done it on a drier day.
It
wasn't quite so cold. And
you literally got rolling in a dry suit.
it's right on the top of a hilltop with kind of no cover around it at all. So it's literally just a kind of a manhole cover, and you pop out and in the middle of a field. So when you come out on the surface and the wind's whipping across as well, and you're really cold and there's snow on the ground, it was really very chilly. The casualty was absolutely fine. Once he got out of the water bit, which was kind of the bottom half of the shaft, he started to warm up a bit more. Some food and water, he was fine. A good decision to call for help rather than get part way up and get stranded, because that would have been a whole load more serious.
That would have been awful, because he would have been in the water and just hypothermia would have set in so much faster.
And if you get passively suspended on a rope and then ending up with suspension syndrome and stuff like that, that can be life threatening. Whereas being cold and miserable at the bottom is not great, but is much better than the alternative.
Oh my gosh!
They're taking a shelter with them. They're taking food with them. It was just too much. I mean, 140 meters is quite a long way to climb entirely under your own steam. It's not trivial.
Yeah, so that's a long way to go.
Yeah, and because it's 80 and 60, there isn't really anywhere you can break within that, as opposed to quite a lot of the things where you might go down that far, but it's 10 and 20 at a time. This is 80 and then 60. It's pretty committing, but it is a stunning place. And you can that's when you can, if you look for photos of Titan online, you can see photos taken by some very good photographers, which gives an idea of quite the size of it. It's an impressive place.
Wow, man. Well done to you and the team. That's awesome. And you definitely need to get a dry suit and start like full rubber neck seals and wrist seals, and then you can go into that. The
problem is then that's fine until you then start prosecuting in it, and then you'll just start drowning in your own sweat because it won't be able to come out. So a lot of the divers, some of them use dry suits for the longer things, but a lot of the divers use wetsuits just because caving in a dry suit is so deeply unpleasant.
Yeah. Getting in like a 543 wetsuit, yeah, I'm all in. Yeah, your money.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Dude, what you guys do are crazy. This is awesome. We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Axnis. The Axnis PNG wireless ICS system delivers cutting-edge wireless ICS technology to any aircraft. As a fully integrated system or as a carry-on, carry-off mobile base station, the PNG wireless system is the right solution for any mission.
All right, I want to get into one more, just one more. And this one, the reason I kind of waited for last on this one, because you have multiple stories on this online. Let me start right away with the Whales Online. Here's the headline on this one. How more than 250 people spent 2 days painstakingly rescuing a caver trapped underground. I mean, just a headline. Wow. All right, the next one. The Guardian. Rescuers free man trapped in Brecon Beacons cave for 2 days. Holy cow. And then the last one. This is in the BBC. Brecon Beacons. Caver trapped for 54-hour relives survival fight. This is awesome. And then there's a little video here that I'm going to play. 1 second I was caving, the next minute the world went mad. And then it all went black, and then 2 minutes later I kind of woke up in a very different state to when I'd started. So yeah, I've been working from home. I basically had 4 weeks off. I had a month off. And then
off the screen, there was like this big sort of hullabaloo with people all talking to each other suddenly. So right. I think you have to go back to work at some point.
Well, I'm already working from home.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. When the fall happened, it was instantaneous. It was like that. There was just intense waves of pain, like really, really not very pleasant at all. My friend Mark was standing next to me, making all sorts of concerned noises and telling me that he just needed to give me a quick check over. I know he won't have hung around. He'll have got out of that cave as quickly as humanly possible to raise the alarm. Mel was talking to me. She daren't move a muscle in case she knocked more rocks down on top of me. So she was kind of frozen in place for about 3 hours up there. I sort of flipped between two states. There was the I'm going to fight this thing and I'm going to survive state, which then became I really don't care and I wish you'd stop talking to me so I could just kind of, let whatever's going to happen kind of state.
What would have happened if you were caving alone?
I don't think I'd still be here. I think I would have died of I think I'd have died of hypothermia if nothing else, essentially. I wouldn't still be here.
when those first advanced first aiders turned up, from that point onwards, I always felt like I had a chance. Once I started becoming more aware of my surroundings again, it became obvious to me that people had come from the Forest of Dean and then from the Mendips. And then I started seeing faces I recognised from Yorkshire, and it just became obvious that people were coming from all over the country. I felt a little bit guilty at one stage, I must admit, and a whole lot of gratitude. The last stretch of the journey was actually a really, really good experience. There were a lot of people there, and they were sort of, forming this big sort of human line, passing the stretcher from person to person, and I can sort of like see face after face after face going past me. Acknowledgements and thanks and nods of respect, and just, it was a really nice experience in a funny kind of way. I'm sure the morphine didn't hurt.
The full stretchers that you will have experienced, but also short versions as well for constricted spaces.
I feel very lucky to be alive. I feel very, very lucky to be able to walk. For 300 people to come to my aid from across the country, all come together to achieve one thing as a team. I take my hats off to them. They're all volunteers, and so I felt it was the right thing to do to volunteer too. So I can help the next poor soul that finds themselves in that situation. It's another world down there. It's like being on the moon or another planet in some respects. I don't think that I would be happy if I didn't go back to it. So I will go back to it.
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding me? Days, 54 hours, 2 days. Yeah. What the heck? 250 people? Are you kidding me?
Well, it was probably more than that involved. About 250 people went underground, but there was probably another 80 on the surface helping in various ways. It's,
wow.
Yeah, quite the event. So the cave's called OFD, so it's Ogothinindi, which is Cave of the Black Spring, but known as OFD because that's a bit of a handful. And it's a cave that's been known since the 1940s. So it's one of these things where there's a river coming out of a hillside, and they dug in and they found the bottom entrance of that, which is now known as OFD 1, and then explored upwards. So there's something like, I think, 35 miles of cave in there, something like that. It's a long system with a multiple levels of development. So there's an active stream in the bottom, and the stream is a big stream. So you're talking about something which is 6-7 foot wide, with a lot of water. And then there's various kind of levels of vertical development where the water has gradually moved its way down. So there's a kind of a constant stream all the way through the bottom, and then a lot of stuff overlaid over the top of it. And there's a couple of other entrances now. So one called Kumdur, which is a series of crawls. Kumdur meaning with water, Kum meaning with, and Dur meaning water. So it's a crawl in water for a bit of it. And then top entrance, which takes you into the further up reaches. So originally, the further ends were explorable by divers. Then they dug a way through into that, and then they've dug some surface entrances. So it's an amazing cave. I mean, I've been down there well over 100 times doing various trips. And the people who were doing the trip, they were going in the Kumdur entrance, which is the Crawley entrance, and they were going up to some higher level passage, which it's not new, but it's just not visited that often. So a lot of the time people do trips between the entrances, or they're kind of standard loops that people do. And they were going somewhere a bit different to get some good photos. And on the way back out, on a kind of Saturday afternoon, they walked across some boulders, and the first guy walked across, they walked over them on the way in, fine. First guy walked across, fine. The second guy walked onto them, and the boulders dropped out from underneath him. And just in the same way as the old lead mines, you have kind of perched boulders. This was a natural rock bridge where the boulders had been wedged, and he fell about 8 meters onto the floor and knocked himself out briefly, but messed himself up quite badly. So he broke his face quite impressively. So he punched a hole properly through the bottom of his chin and broke his jaw and lost a load of teeth. He broke his right tib fib. He also managed to rupture his spleen, broke a load of ribs, give himself some small pneumothoraces. So that's, we found out later, but face was very obviously broken, chest was not great, and his leg was clearly broken. And this was in a kind of awkward area to get to. So fortunately for him, the cave is right underneath the headquarters of the South Wales Caving Club, which also hosts South and Mid Wales Cave Rescue Team. So it's in an old underneath a load of old quarries, and the old quarrymen's cottages is where the caving club and the rescue team have their base. So
pretty much open the back door and then you're there. Oh, hey, look, we're here.
Drop a tunnel down, it'd be fine. So, he wasn't far off underneath where the caving cottage was, but the way that the guys came out to call out was out through Cumdua, but there's a lot of that is very low, tight crawling with some really narrow spaces that you just would not be able to get a stretch down. And the guy who got himself injured is about 6'2". He's not small, so getting him out through that was not going to be an option. So you can go out of the top entrance, but it involves a trip of several miles, including quite a bit of time in the streamway. And that requires a lot of people. And where he was is a difficult place to get to, so needed some rigging to get him out of there. And he was also quite badly hurt. I mean, a lot of our injured people are broken ankles or whatever, something that stops you being mobile.
Right.
Unfortunately, we have people die every so often, big fall where you suffer multi-trauma. If you fall down a 60-meter hole, then you're not going to be being rescued from that. So it's quite unusual we get someone who's as badly injured, but alive and okay-ish. So I'm a member of South and Mid Wales Cave Rescue Team as well for kind of historic reasons. I'm one of the doctors down there, and they're one of the more active teams. So I got a call out about 2:00 in the afternoon saying there's a rescue, and it was like, well, I'm like 4 hours away, so there's probably nothing I can do. And then there was another call about 3 hours later saying, because at that point they just heard that someone had fallen. It's like, caver quite badly injured, we're going to need people. So I rang them, was like, do you need me to come? And they're like, yes, we do. Okay, fine. So I'll let the family know, and then started driving down. It's about it was about 4 hours down. So get my kit together, start driving down. It's about 4 hours down. They have some doctors more locally as well. One of them had
I'm thinking, time out real quick, because right now I'm thinking, like, you got called, you're like, okay, I'm 4 hours away, and then 3 hours later they're calling you like, yeah, we could probably use you. Well, there's another 4 hours after that. Like, I understand that this went on for 2 days, but my mindset right there is like, oh my gosh. So the amount of time that just went by, and then you show up on scene.
So the kind of original call out was when they'd heard that someone had fallen, and this is where some of our trained kind of first aiders went down at that point. And then the 3 hours later is when they'd got to them, assessed it, and was like, he's quite badly hurt. This is going to be a big job. You're going to need some more people. So that's when the second call came, and that's when I started mobilising. And there were a couple of doctors nearby. One had literally about 3 months having had a baby. So she was going on pretty much her first caving trip again. So they went down. I did some of the first bits. I made my way down, and then ended up getting down there I got down there, must have gone down there about 10:00 at night, and they had people underground at that point. And so it's like, we know this is going to take a long time. There's no way he's coming out soon. So at that point, they were kind of mobilising people from teams nearby and all kind of around the country, because like, this is going to take at least a day, probably a couple of days to get him out, just because we know how far it is and how much we have to do. So I ended up going underground about 6:00 the next morning and picked him up from where he'd been brought out, some of the really awkward bits. And he was, I think the most worrying thing for me is when you measured his oxygen levels with SATS probe on air, they were about 86%. And you're like, maybe he's just cold. And then you put a bit of oxygen on him and his SATs come up to 96%. It's like, no. So one of the things you have to do for anaesthetic training is some pretty hardcore exams, and there's a lot of physics in there. There's stuff about gas laws and how much gas there is in a cylinder. So it's like, this is one of the times it's useful. It's like, okay, so we're using this many litres a minute, and we're going to be this many hours, which means we need this many cylinders. So the ambulance service then started kind of scratching around to try and find a load of cylinders. But even getting an oxygen cylinder down to him was about an hour and a half's worth of caving for someone to bring a cylinder in. So I think we went through about 20 cylinders in that time, because he needed it the whole time.
And I imagine, like, you can't be bringing anything crazy down there. So, like, probably a Class D or something.
Yeah. So, like the 2.5, 3 litre cylinders. Yeah.
Nothing crazy. Because you got to get it down there and you got to get him back out. You can't leave him there.
Well, no. So, the bit he fell in was quite small. Some of the other bits he was in, we went through, were quite large, but all the stuff has to fit down, and there are some restriction points. So everything has to be able to fit down. So, and he ended up having some, fairly heavy amounts of pain relief. So he had, quite a lot of pain relief. His facial injury was really quite nasty, so we gave him antibiotics as well, because there's no way you can really clean it. He'd fallen into mud. You can try and clean it, but it's going to get dirty again. And the other thing is the caves are about 8 degrees centigrade, so he's going to get cold because he's not moving. So we've done a lot of work over the last few years about, much of the cave rescue equipment we use isn't necessarily designed for cave rescue. So the rescue stretchers are kind of rescue stretchers and the rescue rigging is, but the, casualty bags for keeping people warm, they aren't really a commercial thing because there isn't a need for it. And stuff that can be used on the surface is often quite big and bulky because space is not a problem, whereas obviously space and weight for us is a massive issue. So we ended up making our own casualty bags a few years ago. The COVID project by one of my colleagues who's had a lot of time on his hands and a lot of enthusiasm. we used that on him and to keep him warm, and then very slowly and gently kind of moved him along. But all of these bits that are easy to walk along, you walk along and there's a hole in the floor and you just step over it. Well, with a stretcher, you've got to rig it, or you've got to fill the hole with people so you can't fall down. So everything just takes a really long time. But we had, so we've got 16 teams in the country, and I think we had people from about 10 of the teams turn up. So quite a lot came down from Derbyshire and did a load of work carrying up the streamway in the middle of the night, Sunday into Monday. And I did a kind of 6-8 hours with him on the Saturday, came out, had a bit of a sleep, had some food, did a bit of coordinating of getting other people in, got my head down, went in the next day to pick him up. So there's about 100-foot haul out of the streamway where you go vertical, and they've had to rescue someone that way before with a less serious, but again, a significant fall. She had her pelvis for that, but not, on the scale of pelvic injuries, not the worst ones. And she had quite a wobble as she came up that and went horizontal at the top. So they wanted me to be at the top so that if he had any kind of wobbles, we were there to do stuff. The main thing is every time he went vertical, he felt really sick, which I think is just because he was quite hypertensive. So I picked him up at the top, and then we came out to some really quite awkward passage, including bits where you're kind of wedged in the passage with him going over your head, because that's where the widest bit of the passage is. The way that the streamway erodes the cave, you often get this kind of keyhole shape where it's wider at the top, and then as the water tables drops, it kind of then trenches down. So for a stretcher going sideways, he's right up in the roof, but that means if the roof's 10-12 foot off the floor, you've got to somehow have a way of them being there, which ends up being cavers wedged up there with people rolling over. It's the first time I've examined a patient as he's being rolled across my face. But by that point we were fairly, we weren't far off from the entrance, and he is an experienced caver and he knows the system, so kind of knew where he was up to with that. But it's really interesting. I've done a lot with him afterwards. We've talked on a number of places about this, because it's one of the biggest cave rescues we've had. It's got a good outcome. He wasn't fine, he'd injured himself quite badly, but he is back to active exploration. He's been
awesome
caving, diving, has joined the rescue team. So we've talked about this quite a lot, but he has no memory of that kind of 8 hours I spent with him to start with. I talked to him all the way through, did loads of stuff. He has no recollection of, he remembers falling, he remembers the first people arriving, and then he's got a big blank area until he was in the streamway, which is about 16 or 18 hours later.
Holy smoke.
So yeah.
Wow.
So it's 54 hours from injury to him coming out on the surface, and then he spent a few weeks in hospital, had his jaw plated and reconstructed, had his leg fixed. His spleen would probably have come out if it got out a couple of days before, because it was a bit of a mess, but by that point it had stopped bleeding, so it had settled down. But it basically smashed his spleen quite badly, and he'd broken quite a lot of ribs. So, again, we didn't know all of that at the time. It was fairly obvious he was not in a good way, but there isn't a lot you can do about most of that stuff underground. Antibiotics, pain relief, splinting, oxygen. We gave him some tranexamic acid to stop him from bleeding, and kind of food and water was quite tricky because he had this hole in the bottom of his mouth, which he referred to as the blowhole. So it was quite good because whenever he went vertical, he would be sick, but it would kind of come out of this hole in the bottom, so it wouldn't go into his airway. But it meant that trying to give him anything to eat or drink was very difficult for him to swallow, because it would just essentially fall out the bottom of his mouth.
Oh my gosh.
A bit of fluid and a bit of sugar through the drip, and he was able to drink a little bit, but you had to kind of drip it right into the back of his mouth. But that was really challenging. A lot of the medicines we take that our team members can use are all taken orally because that's a normal way of doing it. And injecting people is harder and people don't really like it. And it, there is a skill to that, which is hard if you don't practice it. So we were quite useful for that because he had a drip in and we gave most of his medication through the drip, literally because he couldn't take it by mouth. But that's a rare situation we're in. Generally, the people who can't swallow are people who are unconscious, and you often don't need to give them any of the medications that we have anyway. So he was fully conscious, but there was no way he could swallow tablets.
What an incredible story. Holy mackerel. Brendan. Hey, side note question about this is, with everybody, the amount of time and everybody that was there, was it like shift work? Because at one point or another, you have to go to sleep.
So South Wales have quite a few long caves. So OFD is technically the deepest cave in the UK because it's just over 300 meters deep, but it's deep because it's long. So it's got a very gentle dip on it.
300 meters.
But like the deepest cave in the world is 2,000 plus meters over in Russia. So we don't have massive vertical drops, but what we do have in that area is
still a long drop.
300
meters. That's like 1,000 feet. That's a long
the thing
way.
is you can do most of that without ever going on a rope because it's just very long and very gently dipping. So it's a very lengthy cave which has got a very slight dip on it. But that's the way the limestone's formed there. So you've got quite a lot of long systems in South Wales. So they're quite clued up on if there's a rescue from the far end of any one of these systems, it's going to take a long time. So they were very good about rotating people out. So we had teams going in about every 6 hours. And so a team would go in, replace a team. They would then come out because from where you were, it would be, an hour, a couple of hours of not necessarily very easy caving to get back out to the surface again. And the last thing you want to do is have people have an accident because they're tired so it's interesting. People are often quite reluctant to leave because they felt they were fine. And by the time they got back to the surface, they come out and they're like, actually, I'm knackered. I really needed to come out. And it's making a decision before you get tired and then have to come out. But because we had the cottages on the top, there was a kitchen there. You could get hot food. You could have a sleep. It was
beautiful.
Actually, as a location, it was almost ideal. Because if it had been in a more rural area, you could have got people to the surface, but then resting them and feeding them just becomes a lot harder.
Right.
So
they're pulling out camp stoves and tents,
exactly.
Air mattresses and whatever else you can sleep on to try to get comfortable. That's a real challenge.
You come out, people would sort your kit out for you. There'd be, stuff would be being washed and cleaned. The ambulances could drive up and drop some more oxygen off. But they were very good, and they tried again to make sure that in every team, because we had people coming from all over the country, there were people who knew the system. There was a medical person, or at least one medical person in each group going in. There was, somebody who can use the radios. There's somebody who's a good technical rigger. So you've got a group going in who can directly replace it, rather than sending a load of people in who don't know where they're going or can't replace all the skills. But I think there are about 7 or 8 medical people who ended up on that rescue. Wow. I think 6 doctors and a couple of paramedics, I think, something in that order, which is, to be honest, about 80% of the cave rescue professional medical people in the country. And there's a dock in Scotland and a dock in Derbyshire who didn't go, but that's about it. That
is incredible. That is absolutely incredible. I can't believe that, number one, he survived that long to come out. And I can't believe that you guys were able to do it in that amount of time. And he lived to tell this tale. This is incredible.
Yeah, and he's fine. I mean,
back at it now.
Seen him. He's just got back from a exploratory cave diving expedition out in Spain. I mean, he's a
of course he did.
Cave rescue team member, straight back on it. And with all our casualty bag stuff, the temperature he came out was essentially normal. He wasn't hypothermic after 50 odd hours of being still underground in a cold environment, including 10 hours in an active streamway with water running past him, which I think is one of the things, like very gratifying things. The kit that we made to keep people warm kept people warm. And I must have seen 15 or 20 people are trained in doing advanced first aid on that rescue, all of them doing bits and all of them doing it very well. And that's exactly what we do it for. So that's super gratifying to see that then pay its way through, including the people who were first in there who did a really good job. That's their doing, but helping to train people up so they can do that is really good. Yeah.
Oh, what a rescue. Well done, sir. To you and the other 249 plus people that were there.
Yeah, it's very much a team effort. It's not my story. Yeah. It's very much a team story.
So awesome. The amount of resources that we as rescuers put forward to do that. And I'm so happy that there was a happy outcome and that he's on the team now to help out. Man, incredible. Brendan. Oh God, I love this stuff. It blows me away. This is awesome. I know I've had you on for a little while, so I won't keep too much more of your time, but I want to say thank you, first of all, for just coming to share some of these stories that you have with us. They're awesome. I love this. I'm coming caving with you, man. I'm gonna.
Not always like that. Most caving is it's fantastic and it's great, but it doesn't involve rescues. Everyone always thinks it's really dangerous, and it really isn't. But then you have things like this, and then you get a reputation. But it is very safe, but it is great. More than welcome to come caving.
I think you and I will just go out and hang out for the day inside of a cave. I'm all in for this.
Absolutely fine.
This is a good idea. I don't know if my wife will come with us, but I'll ask her. Maybe we can get her to come too. Okay. Well, hey, listen, man, before I let you go, I love getting a piece of advice from everybody. And with everything you've done to this point, and this includes like all your medical training and all the caving that you've done, what piece of advice do you give to people, or would you give to people?
There's all the kind of obvious things like the value of training and the value of preparation. We certainly get some rescues where if people have been a little bit more prepared, knowing their routes, having some extra batteries, it would have been avoided. Or we've also had people who have taken stuff with them, and while they've broken their ankle, that happens, they're not coming out, but they had some food with them, they had some shelter, so actually when we get to them it's only a broken ankle as opposed to broken ankle and profoundly hypothermic, all that kind of stuff. I think the other thing, so one of the other things I do is I'm a trustee for the Rescue Benevolent Fund, which is a fund set up to support people with mountain and cave rescue family if they are injured or suffer kind of problems as a result of either an exercise or training. So and some of it's like, if you fall and break your ankle when you're on a rescue or when you're doing training, then you have some time off work, we can help with that. But also some of it's the psychological bit and people who really struggle with that. Because I chose to go into medicine. I've chosen to go into a specialty in medicine where people aren't always very well, and on intensive care people do often quite often people die, and that's something I'm aware of and I deal with, and it's a part of it. But that's not what my mates who do caving go into it for. And It's also a relatively small community, so there is a reasonable chance if someone is in a serious place, it will be someone we know. I've certainly rescued some of my mates on a few occasions. Fortunately, they've all been okay. But that kind of thing, can be hard to deal with, and I'm not going to pretend that I can be immune for it. I'm absolutely not. But I think there's a much more of a recognition that well-being and looking after yourself is really important, and looking after team members is important. And it's nice that I'm able to do that in some small way through the charity bit, but also the bit that we try and factor that into some of the first aid training about how you deal with things, how you process it, what you do if you're not okay. And I think that's really important, because it's not necessarily stuff you're expecting. And the nature of what we do is that it doesn't always end well. And that happens, and that's not struggling is not a reflection on you as a person, you being weak or not up to it. It's a reflection that bad things happen, and sometimes that's upsetting, and that's fine. And if nothing ever upsets you, that's probably more problematic than that's probably not normal. And I think
we talk about it here quite a bit. Take care of your mind.
And I think you go back 20, 30 years, if you've been talking about this, that wouldn't be something that would be being talked about as openly. People would have had problems, but they would just have gone off and dealt with it themselves, which is often not the most constructive way of doing it, or just not engaged with it. We've had people who've had challenge and have dealt with it, they've been supported, they've come back and they carry on, and that is better for them and better for everyone else. So I think that's probably the big one. I
love it. Well, man, thank you so much. I love the piece of advice. I like that piece of advice very much, because it's something that resonates with every one of us that do this job. It just we see some crazy stuff, and you gotta keep your mind right. So,
and I think certainly for the teams I work with, so everyone is a volunteer. No one has to go and do it. They're choosing to do it. It's something that they're doing because they think it's the right thing to do. So it's really important we look after people, because volunteers are really valuable. I mean, we aren't. This isn't our job. This is not my job. This is my hobby. It's a hobby I find very important and very valuable, but that's the same with everyone else. So you need to look after people, otherwise they won't do it. And certainly in our field, only cavers are able to rescue cavers. So if you don't treat people well, then you're not going to have a team. Like it's not something that we've got a lot of people who can do it. So we need to look after all of them because they're all valuable.
Love it. And Brendan, thank you again for coming on and joining me. This was incredible. My first cave rescue guy ever. Excellent. I promise you, I'm coming up and we're going to go caving together. It's got to happen. And
absolutely.
Yeah. I'll get my wife to sign off on it. It'll be good. So, but I appreciate it, and I will be in touch with you very soon. Until next time, man, you stay safe. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. Go. Now it's time for me to pull chocks and take off. But before I go, I'm always looking for the memorable rescues that people have done. If you have one that you're willing to share, or know somebody who has a story, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to highlight it here at the Real ResQ. For everybody that is standing by for that SAR alarm, remember, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. So until next time, fly safe and swim hard. Thank you for joining me today here at the Real ResQ Podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast. We'd also like to say thank you to our sponsors for this episode.
Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information. Axnis. The Axnis PNG wireless ICS system delivers cutting-edge wireless ICS technology to any aircraft. As a fully integrated system, or as a carry-on, carry-off mobile base station, the PNG wireless system is the right solution for any mission.
And
whether your mission is saving lives or servicing high-value assets, Onboard Systems Hoist stays ready to assist. Features such as single-point payout reduce the potential for hoist-induced load swings, enhancing overall safety. For more information, go to hoist-winch.onboardsystem.com.
Brendan, hey, quick side question with all this caving stuff. Have you ever had a funny moment happen to you that stands out, like in training or something?
I can think there's. I'll give you two. So one was a rescue. So we same cave system, Peak Cavern Speedwell. There's a very, very big flooded passage in a sump called Far Sump's, like 300 meters long. So we're called out. A couple of divers have gone to do the trip. They've gone down Titan. They're going to go through the sump, come out the bottom entrance. Fine. First diver goes in the water. Fine. Second diver, who knows the way through, has a problem with his kit after the first diver's gone. So comes out, can't dive. So returns to the surface, goes around to the other entrance. Other guy's not appeared. Like, this is not good. He's diving. It's a long way. He's not been there before. This can be really bad. So the team go in, and there's a whole number of things that may have happened here. So the team go in, they start walking towards the sump, and they see a body lying next to the exit of the sump where the guys come through, lying there motionless. They're like, oh no, something disastrous has happened. So they cautiously approach, and the first person pokes him, at which point he wakes up. So he had got through, nearly got out, realised he was lost, laid down, fallen asleep, didn't hear people coming along the passage making a load of noise shouting his name. And I think pretty much everyone, it was a kind of immediate kind of like, oh my goodness, what on earth is this? So that was not the expected outcome, and it just went from being the worst outcome to being absolutely fine, and then we walked him out. But I think that was a kind of, everyone had a moment there. I think the
he's
the
dead.
other one,
No, he's just sleeping.
yeah,
It's all
he's
good.
fine, just tired. So I think the other one would be so the OFD rescue, the Big Whales rescue. So that was beginning of November. And certainly in the UK, there's a charity called Movember, which is where you can grow a moustache for charity over the course of November. And I can grow a reasonable moustache, but I have to admit I do tend to preload a little bit, so I tend to push the limits of how much my wife will tolerate me not shaving for a couple of weeks before. So come the beginning of November, when this rescue happened, I was sporting a fairly fine handlebar moustache, much like Lemmy from Motorhead.
Yeah.
And then on the Tuesday morning after we'd got him out, we had, or the evening before, we had a phone call to ask whether I would do an interview for BBC Breakfast News, so like the main news programme on the main TV channel in the UK in the morning at about 9:30. So I did this interview with a very fine moustache. My wife was mortified. It's like, you've got to ask them if they will ask if that's for November, because quite often you see sports stars, like rugby players particularly, having moustaches that time of year, and it's clearly for that.
Yeah.
So we asked them and said, we'll definitely ask. No comment at all. So the photo of me, if you find me online, is me with a particularly fine droopy tash, which doesn't really look like me the rest of the year. So yeah, so I was a bit wary when I'm growing a moustache now if I'm going to end up on the news again.
It's got to be wife approved. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, it's for charity, so she can't object. She tolerates it, but come the 1st of December, it's straight off.
Oh, Brendan, I love it. That's awesome.